Hi everyone, welcome to Learn How to Speak Cebuano with John. This is my first published video here, teaching Cebuano to all of you who wants to learn the language. I mostly teach Cebuano in a one-on-one context using Skype, and I mostly deal with Cebuano grammar, which focuses more on helping my students make their own sentences using different sentence structures. I also have published a simplified grammar book of Cebuano language, some of which will be tackled in my podcast and here on my videos as well. So make sure to subscribe. While it's fun and exciting to learn grammar, it will be very difficult if you have very little vocabulary in Binisaya. That is why in this episode we will be learning some useful phrases that you can memorize to start learning Binisaya. You can expect more videos of me breaking down common Cebuano sentences for you to help you understand how sentences work in Cebuano language, the way we use it in everyday language. Just a fair warning, I am not a language expert. I did study linguistics, but I'm not saying that I am an expert in Cebuano language, but I do have a fair share of understanding of how Cebuano language works, including grammar as well, because I studied linguistics in my college. Also, I do have an understanding of many aspects of Cebuano language because I am a Davao Cebuano speaker. So for those who are Cebuano speakers who are just here to mock people who are trying to make videos teaching other people, how to speak Cebuano language, then this might not be the video for you. So if you want to mock people in teaching Cebuano grammar, then you can make your own video. This isn't for you. But if you are here to learn the language, you just want to explore the language, understand how the sentences work so that you can make your own sentences, then this video is for you. All right, thank you very much. So much for that. So, in this episode, we are going to talk about how to greet people in Cebuano, which is something very important when you're dealing with the language community. Now, here are some common phrases for greeting. Usually, when we're saying hello, we would say like, "Kumusta?" Or we would greet them according to the time of the day. We would say, "Maayong buntag," "Maayong udto," "Maayong hapon," or "Maayong gabi." The common responses that we hear when someone greets you or when someone says hello, we would say maayo man, maayo pud, maayong buntag, maayong udto, maayong hapon or gabi ipud, ikaw, kumusta man ka? So these are just the common responses. Now, how do we use all of this? We're going to talk about them as we proceed with the video. So you stay tuned, okay? All right. So let's get down to it. Our first phrases are greetings. Let's start with saying good morning. Good morning in Binisaya is maayong buntag. Maayong buntag. Right. Maayong buntag. Let's try to break down the phrase, okay? The first word here is maayo, right? So the first word here is maayo, which means good or well. When it's paired with the noun buntag, again, buntag, maayo as an adjective requires a descriptive linking particle nga. Linking particle nga. So that's why it becomes maayo. Originally, it's supposed to be maayo nga buntag. Good morning. Right? And since it's a greeting, we normally contract the phrase to make it easier to say by changing the particle nga into a eclectic particle ng. So we remove the a at the end of the linking particle and attach the particle into the adjective and combining it with the adjective maayo. Right. So from maayo nga buntag, it becomes maayong buntag. From maayo nga buntag, it becomes maayong buntag. And you will see this structure all the time in many Cebuano sentences. When you have an adjective followed by a noun, you will need a particle to link the adjective and the noun together into one phrase. And most of the time, what we use are actually particle nga and particle ug. The difference between the two will be a little complex for you as a beginner, so I will put that aside for now, okay? But most of the time we use the adjectival nga. So maayo, adjective, nga, and then buntag. Maayo nga buntag. Good morning. Now, during lunchtime, we greet people with maayong udto or maayo nga udto. Maayong udto or maayo nga udto. So you don't really say this in English. You don't say, oh, good noon. You don't say that. You normally would say good afternoon. But in Cebuano, there is a distinction between morning, lunch, afternoon, and dinner, and in the evening. So a noon is a special time for us because it's a time to eat. And since Filipinos has a very communal culture, so we gather around during noon, during lunchtime. So it's a very special time for us. So when we meet someone during lunchtime, we will greet them maayong udto, good noon. Right. So in the right, so maayo is good while udto is noon. So basically you are greeting people good noon, and that is between 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Because 12 to 1 p.m. is normally lunchtime here in the Philippines. So we would say maayong udto. Again, that's maayong udto. Maayo nga udto becomes maayong udto. In the afternoon, perhaps after 1 p.m., we greet people with maayong hapon, or maayo nga hapon. Again, maayo is good or well, plus particle nga, and the word hapon, which is afternoon. So that's why it becomes from maayong nga hapon, it becomes maayong hapon in a conversational language. Normally, hapon in the Philippines is between 1 up to 5:30 p.m. In the evening, we greet people maayong gabi. Maayong gabi. So again, maayo is good or well plus particle nga when combining an adjective and a noun in one phrase, while gabi is night or evening. So gabi, Gabi. Okay, gabi. Normally we greet people maayong gabi from sundown till right about 2 to 3 a.m. Yeah. So there's also a greeting when it's really early morning, when the sun is still down, when the sun is still not up, but it's already considered as morning, then we have a different greeting for that. We would say maayong kadlawon. Maayong kadlawon. Because kadlawon is like in the morning before sundown, before sunrise. So that's kadlawon. Again, our greetings are maayong buntag, good morning, maayong udto, good noon, maayong hapon, good afternoon, maayong gabi, good evening. We don't have greetings for good night because it doesn't exist in Philippine culture. We originally in pre-colonial period, we don't really say, "Oh, good night." We just tell people to go to sleep. That's just how it is. So instead, we just use the English greetings good night. If you want to say good night to someone, we don't have that equivalent in Cebuano, so just tell someone good night. We use a lot of English greetings anyway. Right. But the purpose of this, the reason why we're teaching you how to greet in Cebuano is because we need you to learn the structure of the language, the structure of the phrase. And the best way to do that is understanding how greetings work, like how does the adjectival greetings work in Cebuano language, which is applicable to any kind of adjectival phrase. Most adjectival phrase, yeah, phrases. Okay, now how do we respond when someone greets us? We should respond with the greetings plus the word sab, which is short for usab. Normally, we would just say the same greeting and then just add the sub at the end. For example, when someone says maayong buntag or good morning, then you say maayong buntag sab, good morning sab. Mm. So some people, there is a variation though, because some people would say, like, especially if you're a modern speaker, you would say sad instead of sub. So that's just a variation. This is just a language change, but it's not the right way. It's not actually sad as in SAD, but it's actually sab, short for usab, which is us. Usab has two meanings depending on its function. If it's used as a verb, usab as a verb means to change, to replace, or to change something. The physical characteristic or whatever you want to change. But as an attitudinal particle, usab or sab means as well or also. So if you're gonna say maayong buntag, that would be good morning as well. Maayong buntag sab. Right? Is that I think that's quite easy, right? This is the simplest way to respond to a greeting. To just add sab or usab at the end of the phrase as a response. Again, at the end of the phrase, not a sentence. This isn't a complete sentence. Okay, so how else do we greet people, especially friends and acquaintances in Binisaya? There are plenty of ways to do that. Okay, so how else do we greet people, especially friends and acquaintances in Binisaya? When you want to ask, how are you doing? We say kumusta, right? We say kumusta or kumusta man ka. So we're gonna break it down for you, don't worry. So when you want to ask how are you doing, we say kumusta or kumusta man ka. Now, kumusta is derived from the Spanish greeting como estas, which means how are you in English. If you want to sound more interested in engaging, just say kumusta man ka. Yeah? So we're just asking kumusta, it's almost like a greeting. Someone like just saying, oh, how you doing? You're not really asking how you doing, how the person is doing. You're just really saying hi, you know? But if you're gonna say kumusta man ka, you have the attitudinal particle man here, which indicates that someone is interested, someone is like unaware of the situation, of your situation, of the person you're talking to situation. So you're kind of like curious. Man is actually an attitudinal particle indicating that the speaker is curious. Kumusta man ka? So ka here is a pronoun, is a post pronoun. So we would say kumusta man ka, like how are you doing? You're really curious. When you use this kumusta man ka instead of kumusta, you are more curious of how the person is doing. Like you would say, "Oh, how are you doing? Are you great? Are you doing okay?" That's exactly how it means. Whereas if you're just gonna say kumusta, it's just saying hi. So when someone says kumusta, you say, what do we say again? We say maayo man. So we normally respond by saying maayo man, which means I am well or just fine. Maayo, which is good or well, and again the particle man, since the information of being well is unknown to the person you are talking to. After that, you can ask the other person back, how are you? To do that, you say kumusta man ka, right? And then your response. So, well, hold on. So, kumusta man ka, right? So the word ikaw is a preposed subject pronoun, which means you in English. So basically, you are asking the person you. You? It's like the same in Spanish. They would normally say in Spanish like, ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo está? And you would say like, ah, bien, muy bien. ¿Etu? So you would say, so that's etu. It's like ikaw. It's the same in Cebuano. You would say ikaw, kumusta man ka? How are you? Right? So the word ikaw is a preposed subject pronoun, which means you in English. So basically, you're asking the person you, how are you, or how about you? After that, you return the question, kumusta man ka? So we have actually two types of pronouns here. We have a preposed subject pronoun and a postposed subject pronoun. Ikaw is a preposed subject pronoun, and kumusta man ka, the ka is a postposed subject pronoun. Now, if you want to learn about pronouns, you have to go to my podcast. I've actually just discussed it just a while ago. What is the difference between a pre-post pronoun and a post-post pronoun, and what are other pronouns out there? So it would really help you a lot if you go to my podcast, Learn How to Speak Cebuano with John, and it talks about there a lot of Cebuano grammar rules that will be helpful for you as a beginner learner. You'll be able to break down a lot of things and understand how sentences work in Cebuano, especially if you are a zero Cebuano learner. Yes. And you can check out my podcast, Learn How to Speak Cebuano with John, in any podcast platform. It's in Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and any other podcast out there. Yeah, it's available mostly online on any on any podcast platform. Okay, where were we? Yeah, so ikaw is the subject pronoun for you, and ka is the ka is a prepost subject. Ikaw is the prepost subject pronoun for you, and ka is the postpost object pronoun. A subject pronoun for you. They're both you, but different cases and different functions. In English, you is always plural, even if you are talking about only one person. However, in Cebuano, ikaw and ka are both singular you, which we use different pronouns for plural you. We have a different pronoun for plural you. It's almost like you all in English. It's almost like you all in English because it's kind of like hey y'all, that's plural. But if you're just gonna say you, it is considered as plural even though you are referring to only one person. But in Cebuano, you really have to be specific with plurality. That's why we have a lot of markers for plurality in Cebuano. There are words that have specific markers for plurality depending on their function on the sentence. So it really is a matter of like choosing the right plurality for different phrases within the sentence. And it can be a little confusing sometimes because there's a lot of plural markers. Anyway, the other person would normally respond maayo sab or maayo pud. Pud and sab are almost the same. They're actually quite similar, but not synonymous. Like they're not exactly the same. They're very different, but in most cases they're kind of like similar, especially when it comes to greetings. So you can choose between sab or pud. You can use both since they both mean good as well. Okay, maayo sab or maayo pud. Sab literally means again in English, and literally usab literally means again, and pud literally means also in English. So pud is directly translated as also in many sentences in Bisaya. But both actually have two different functions as an attitudinal particle. Sab and pud are actually attitudinal particles, and they have a word of origin. The sab is from usab, and then pud is from upud. Upud is an archaic word that is used to indicate that something is like repeated or something like that. But lately it has been changed and it has been very limited to attitudinal particle now. Well, attitudinal particle is one of the most difficult part of learning Cebuano because it talks about the attitude of a speaker. So you might want to put that aside. Just remember those that are very useful that you hear all the time. Okay. So how does Cebuano greeting go in a conversation? How do we use it in a conversation? Let's say we have Jane and Tom greeting each other. Okay. So we have here Tom greeting Jane. So Tom says, "Maayong buntag, Jane. Maayong buntag, Jane." And then Jane would respond, "Maayong buntag sab, Tom. Maayong buntag sab, Tom." Now, as an English speaker, you would say, "Tom, maayong buntag sab, Tom." It's so fancy. When you say it that way, with an accent, with an English accent, it sounds very fancy. So try to change the pronunciation a little bit using these Cebuano phonemes. Now, I'm going to teach you the Cebuano phonemes later as we proceed with our videos, with my other videos. Okay, so Jane responds, Maayong buntag, sab Tom. And then Tom asks, Kumusta man ka? Kumusta man ka? So kumusta is like how are you, right? How are you, Jane? So Jane's response is maayo man. So she was really giving a proper response to kumusta man ka because Tom didn't ask kumusta, which is a kind of greeting only. And under normal circumstances, if you just say kumusta, it's just greeting someone. So because Tom asked kumusta man ka, he's showing interest. So Jane responds, maayo man. Maayo man, maayo man. So again, we are using man here because Tom is not aware that Jane is fine. So because this is a new information, Jane is using maayo man to show that this is the information that Tom needs to know. That's the function of attitudinal particle man. Maayo man, and then Jane asks, ikaw, you, about you, kumusta man ka, Tom? How are you, Tom? Yeah, so that's how Jane responds. She returned the favor, she returned the greeting or the question to Tom. And then Tom says, maayo pud. And you can say here, maayo sab, maayo pud. Right? So, good as well. And then Jane says, sige Tom, ayo. Now, sige has a lot of function. Sige is actually like is a kind of adverbial that would indicate that you are like letting someone do something, like it would allow someone to do something. It is both a verb and can be used as an adverbial as well. So in this case, it is served as an adverbial, or I think it's an interjection. Yeah, and it's kind of like saying sige. It's kind of like saying that, oh yeah, all right, Tom, or something like that. All right, Tom. And then ayo is a type of greeting, like a greeting of saying goodbye. That would mean like take care. So if someone says to you, if someone tells you ayo, that would mean like take care. So sige Tom, ayo, it's like, oh, all right, Tom, take care. And then Tom would respond, ikaw pod, you too. Again, ikaw is you, and then pod is also, so you as well. You too, Jane. Ayo, take care. All right? So that's how a casual conversation of a greeting someone would go in Binisaya. By the way, ayo means take care. Again, I'm just saying that again, that ayo is to take care. So when you say ayo to a person, that means you're telling them to take care of him or herself. All right? So our vocabularies for this episode are, where was that? Our vocabulary for this episode are maayong buntag, maayong udto, maayong hapon, maayong gabi, kumusta, maayong buntag, gabi, udto, hapon pod, ikaw, kumusta man ka. So try to remember all these phrases. We will break down more about sentences in Cebuano later. I will give you a rundown on how Cebuano sentences work. It's just a glimpse. I'm just giving you a glimpse of how sentences work in Cebuano sentence so that you can understand how they work and how I conduct my lesson online. All right. So please remember the phrases because they are very useful and you can use them in any type of conversation. Alright, so daghang salamat sa pagpaminaw. Thank you very much for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe on my channel and my podcast to get more information about Cebuano language. You can also support my videos and podcasts through Patreon or buymeacoffee.com/cojstuff. Check out the links in the description below. And I will say goodbye now. Thank you. Daghang salamat og amping pirmi. Bye-bye.